The moment the intergalactic scouts had their first glimpse of Earth, they knew something was different. It wasn't just the planet's blue-green beauty or the strange, swirling clouds that seemed to pulse with life. No, it was the creatures that called it home, their determination, their raw energy, their unpredictable savagery. It was a world that didn't make sense, a planet that didn't follow the rules. Zikorian, a veteran of countless scouting missions across the galaxy, stared down at the blue marble from his observation ship. His antennae twitched in silent contemplation. He had seen worlds that had been overrun by superintelligent beings, others with vast, powerful creatures capable of destroying entire cities with a single roar. He had visited planets with more advanced technology than the collective could even imagine. Yet nothing had prepared him for Earth. The reports had been cryptic at best. Some said the planet was home to a dominant species of intelligent beings, others claimed that Earth was a quiet backwater, ignored by most galactic explorers because it was too volatile, too dangerous. Zikorian's mission, as was customary, was to assess whether the planet was worth contacting, or if it needed to be quarantined from galactic affairs. If the species there were too dangerous, there would be no diplomatic engagement. Earth would be left alone to rot in its own volatile stew. But Zikorian wasn't so sure. The moment his ship entered Earth's atmosphere, things started to go wrong. A storm of epic proportions engulfed the ship, thrashing it about like a toy in a child's hand. His crew of 6, experienced scouts all, had been jolted awake by the violent turbulence. The skies above the planet's surface were tumultuous, filled with the kind of energy that would have obliterated lesser ships. "Report, Captain," Zikorian commanded, his voice cool despite the chaos. G, his second-in-command, adjusted the controls frantically. Her multi-eyed face was tense as she struggled to keep the ship stable. "We've entered a severe atmospheric disturbance, Captain. Nothing in the records indicated this. We're being tossed around like a leaf in the wind." Zikorian glanced at the scanning panel, where massive bursts of energy shot across the sky, slashing through the clouds like jagged swords. This wasn't on the map. "This is no ordinary storm." "No, sir. It's something else," G muttered, fingers dancing over the controls. "We're losing power. The energy readings are off the charts. The planet's storms don't even make sense." The lights flickered, and for a moment, Zikorian wondered if this was how it would end. One last journey, ending in an uncontrolled descent into Earth's chaotic atmosphere. But then, something unexpected happened. The ship, against all odds, suddenly leveled out. The turbulent winds calmed as if the very planet had decided to offer them a fleeting moment of respite. Zikorian's eyes narrowed, his sharp, calculating mind already turning. "Set course for the surface. We'll make our landing." "But Captain, if this planet is as unstable as it seems, we may not," G began, but Zikorian cut her off with a steady glance. "We've come this far. We land." The descent to Earth was like no other Zikorian had ever experienced. As the ship broke through the clouds, his eyes were treated to a landscape unlike any other he had seen before. The planet was beautiful, in a raw, untamed sort of way, but it also felt as if it were constantly in flux. Earth's oceans, vast and powerful, rolled under the skies, while its landmasses seemed to be torn between the forces of creation and destruction. Volcanoes spewed fire in the distance, and massive forests stretched to the horizon, only to be replaced by deserts, cities, and mountains. The ship touched down in a dense jungle, the engine's thrusters kicking up clouds of dust and debris as the landing gears settled into the earth. Zikorian's heart thudded in his chest, and the anticipation of the unknown made his skin tingle. The moment the door opened, he was hit with a blast of humid air, thick with the smell of vegetation, earth, and something more dangerous. Something primal. G followed Zikorian out, along with the rest of the crew. The team was tense, weapons ready, scanning their surroundings. They had landed in an alien jungle, surrounded by towering trees and strange noises. It was silent for a few moments, a brief calm before the storm. "Stay sharp," Zikorian ordered, eyes scanning the foliage. The jungle was teeming with life, but what kind of life? He had studied the records, yes, but nothing could have prepared him for the sheer intensity of the planet's atmosphere. There was something alive about the place, an energy, a power, an unpredictability that gnawed at the edges of his senses. Chi stepped forward, the hum of her multi-limbed exoskeleton sending a vibration through the ground. "Captain, the air quality here is strange. I'm detecting traces of an unfamiliar chemical composition, mixed with something dangerous." Sicorian turned to her. "Dangerous how?" "It's like," Chi's voice faltered for a moment. "Like a predator's scent, Captain. Something hunting, something that's not too far from here." That was enough to make everyone stop moving. They all turned to the dense thicket around them, scanning for any sign of movement. "Check the perimeter," Sicorian ordered. The scouts quickly moved into position, but Sicorian couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The jungle felt alive, and not in the way that most forests did. This felt wrong. The first sign of trouble came from above. A shriek, high-pitched and blood-curdling, split the air, followed by a rustling from the trees. Sicorian barely had time to react before a massive creature dropped from the canopy, its claws outstretched and its mouth agape, revealing row upon row of sharp teeth. "Move!" Sicorian shouted. The team scattered, running in different directions as the creature landed with a bone-crushing thud. Its body was like that of a predatory cat, sleek and muscular, but with a set of wings that unfolded menacingly. It was unlike anything the scouts had ever seen. Chi fired her weapon, but the creature darted to the side, its agility almost inhuman. It hissed and slashed at the air, forcing the Zyther to scramble. "Fall back! Now!" Sicorian barked. They ran, darting between trees and underbrush, trying to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the monstrous creature that had appeared out of nowhere. Sicorian's mind raced. He had dealt with predators before, but never like this. The creature wasn't just fast and powerful, it was clever, almost as if it could predict their every move. Sicorian knew that they needed more than speed to survive this. "We're not going to outrun it," Sicorian muttered, realizing that this planet was unlike any other they had encountered. The creature gave chase, its long claws scraping against the bark of trees as it followed the Zyther, its roar sending shivers down their spines. Sicorian, ever the strategist, thought quickly. They needed a plan, something unconventional, something they hadn't yet tried. "Split up," he shouted. "Draw it into the open, make it chase you. I'll set a trap." As the team scattered, each member took a different route, leading the creature into a vast open clearing. Sicorian prepared his trap, using the terrain to his advantage. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was the only one they had. The creature, enraged and confused by the sudden disappearance of its prey, charged forward with reckless abandon. It barreled through the clearing, and just as Sicorian had planned, a large boulder from above tumbled down, blocking its path and sending it careening off to the side. The team regrouped quickly, catching their breath as they assessed the creature. It wasn't done yet, but for the moment, they had survived. Sicorian took a moment to look around, his thoughts racing. Earth had just introduced itself in the most chaotic of ways, strange storms, unpredictable creatures, and terrain that seemed bent on crushing them at every turn. And yet, there was something compelling about this planet. It was dangerous, yes. But it was also vibrant, alive in ways that other worlds weren't. It was the kind of world that tested everything: strength, strategy, ingenuity. For the first time in his long career, Sicorian had the sense that Earth wasn't just a planet to be studied, it was a planet to be feared. And perhaps, a planet to be respected. "Stay alert," Sicorian ordered. "This planet doesn't play by the rules. And neither can we." The team nodded, prepared for whatever else Earth would throw at them. They had just begun to understand the true nature of this planet, and it was already clear that nothing here would be easy. Earth wasn't just a new world to explore, it was a challenge. And this was only the beginning. The Zyther scouts had barely regained their bearings before the next wave of danger descended upon them. Their quick thinking had bought them some time, but the jungle around them seemed to pulse with an ever-present threat, as if the very Earth was conspiring against their survival. Sicorian had been right, Earth was not a planet to be taken lightly. They were intruders here, and the planet would test them in ways they could never have anticipated. The jungle itself seemed to close in around them, and the strange creature they had narrowly escaped moments ago was far from the only danger lurking in the shadows. The air was thick with a kind of primal energy, heavy, suffocating, and the once beautiful landscape now felt more like an untamed wilderness where only the strongest, most cunning creatures survived. After an hour of carefully moving through the dense foliage, Sicorian ordered his team to halt and take stock of their situation. He scanned the horizon, his sharp eyes flicking over the thick trees, the underbrush, and the strange, unsettling noises that seemed to be coming from all around them. Something was out there, something big, and it wasn't done with them yet. "We need to be careful," Sicorian said, his voice low and steady. "We've only just scratched the surface. This planet is alive in ways we can't even begin to understand." She nodded, her multiple eyes flicking from side to side, her antennae twitching in alert. "The chemical signatures I'm reading are still off the charts. It's not just animals here, Captain. It's almost like the entire ecosystem is connected. Like it's one massive predator." "We don't have the luxury of taking things slow," Vesk said, adjusting his weapon with a grunt. "That creature we encountered earlier was just a warm-up. We need to find shelter and figure out what we're really dealing with. Otherwise, we'll never make it out of here." Sicorian considered this for a moment. Vesk wasn't wrong. The team had come in with the expectation of encountering difficult terrain and possibly hostile creatures, but what they were experiencing was something far beyond their initial preparations. Earth's creatures, it seemed, weren't just survivors of a harsh environment, they were a part of an ecosystem that was actively hunting them. A system built on constant struggle for dominance. "We'll move to higher ground," Sicorian decided. "We'll find a vantage point. If there's a pattern to this ecosystem, we'll see it from above." The group began to trek up a steep incline, pushing through the thick foliage. The journey was grueling, with every step made more difficult by the dense underbrush, strange roots that seemed to grab at their legs, and the ever-present hum of wildlife that seemed to watch them from every corner of the jungle. Chi, who had been silently analyzing the data from her sensors, spoke up again. "Captain, I'm reading more of those spikes. It's happening more frequently now. Whatever this is, it's moving toward us." Sicorian's brow furrowed. "How close?" "Close," Chi said grimly. "Too close." Without warning, the jungle erupted in a cacophony of sound, the shrill screams of creatures, the crackling of trees, and the rapid, thunderous pounding of footsteps. From the corner of his eye, Sicorian saw a dark shape moving through the trees, fast and lethal, its silhouette unmistakable. "Incoming!" Sicorian shouted. "Take cover!" The scouts scattered, diving for trees and boulders as the massive creature burst through the underbrush. It was unlike anything they had encountered so far, a behemoth, standing at least 3 times the height of a Zyther, with broad, muscular limbs and sharp, jagged teeth that gleamed menacingly. It had the body of a predatory insect, segmented and armored, with 6 legs that moved like piston-driven machinery. Its head was a grotesque fusion of reptilian and insectoid features, with glowing eyes that locked onto the Zyther like a laser targeting system. Sicorian didn't hesitate. His team had trained for moments like this. They opened fire, their weapons lighting up the dark jungle with bright bursts of energy. But the creature was faster than they expected. It darted to the side, evading their shots with terrifying agility, before launching itself at them with a bone-shaking screech. "Split up!" Sicorian yelled. "Draw it into the open!" They had barely gotten out of the way in time. The creature crashed into the boulder where Sicorian had been standing just moments before, sending it flying like a child's toy. He could feel the ground shake beneath his feet as the creature advanced, its mandibles clicking together hungrily. Chi was the first to react, darting to the left and drawing the creature's attention away from the others. The creature screeched in fury and gave chase. Sicorian knew they didn't have long. They needed to outsmart it, to turn the tables before it wore them down. Vesk, can you use the terrain? Sicorian asked quickly, keeping his eye on the creature. Try to guide it toward the ravine ahead. Vesk grinned, the adrenaline of the fight kicking in. I can do that. Just keep it busy. Sicorian turned to the others. Nrix, flank it from the right. I'll take the left. We'll trap it in the ravine. The plan was risky, but they had no choice. The creature was relentless, and it was only a matter of time before they ran out of options. They had to think on their feet. The team fanned out, working in perfect sync as they led the creature toward the narrow ravine Sicorian had spotted earlier. The creature followed with terrifying speed, its massive legs pounding against the earth. G and Vesk made sure to stay just ahead of it, keeping it focused on them while Nrix and Sicorian positioned themselves at the sides, waiting for the perfect moment. Sicorian's heart pounded in his chest. They were playing a dangerous game, one wrong move and they would all be dead. But the terrain was their advantage. The creature, focused entirely on G and Vesk, didn't seem to notice the narrowing passage until it was too late. With a sharp cry, Vesk veered off to the side, ducking behind a large rock, and the creature, in its fury, charged straight into the ravine. The sound of its heavy body crashing into the narrow canyon walls was deafening. For a moment, everything went silent, and then the creature's angry screech echoed through the jungle. Sicorian took a deep breath, his hand shaking slightly as he adjusted his weapon. They had done it. For now. But there was no time to rest. The creature was still alive, and it was thrashing against the ravine walls, trying to escape. The Scyther team regrouped quickly, knowing they had to take advantage of the moment. Sicorian glanced around at his team, their faces tense but determined. We've managed to survive the first wave, but this planet will keep testing us. Earth isn't like anything we've faced before. We've learned that the hard way. He turned to Nrix. What's the status of our ship? Nrix tapped away at the control panel, eyes flicking across the readouts. It's still functional, Captain. Barely. We can't stay out here much longer without a backup plan. She looked around at the still trembling jungle, her voice low but firm. What's our next move, Captain? Sicorian considered this, the weight of their situation pressing down on him. We keep moving. We don't know how many more of these creatures are out there, but we need to find the core of this planet's ecosystem, figure out how it works, why everything here is so dangerous, and how we can survive long enough to leave. The jungle was alive with danger, but one thing was clear, they weren't leaving until they understood Earth's true nature. And whatever this planet had in store for them next, Sicorian was ready to face it, because for all its savage beauty, Earth had just earned its place in the galaxy's list of the most fearsome planets. Let's go, he said with determination. This is only the beginning. The ground trembled beneath them, and the air seemed to vibrate with a low hum, as though the planet itself were alive, aware of their presence. Sicorian's senses were on high alert. Despite their victory in the ravine, there was no time to relax. Every step they took felt like a gamble. The jungle around them was no longer just a backdrop to their mission, it had become an adversary, a relentless force that seemed determined to test their every move. The Scyther scouts had learned one crucial truth in the last few hours: Earth wasn't just dangerous because of its creatures. It was dangerous because the creatures were part of an intricate, interconnected web, a system of life that existed in perfect balance, where every predator, every prey, and every element of the environment played its part. It was a system that demanded constant adaptation, constant awareness. And Sicorian was beginning to understand that the planet's dangerous creatures were far more intelligent than anyone had anticipated. We've got to move faster, Sicorian muttered as they trekked through the jungle, pushing through thick vines and dense foliage. The air was heavy, thick with humidity, and the distant sounds of the jungle seemed to be closing in around them. She was the first to speak up. Her multi-eyed gaze darted nervously from one side of the jungle to the other. Captain, I'm reading another surge. A huge one. Something is coming. It's like a storm, but not in the sky. Sicorian halted, holding up his hand for the team to stop. His antennae twitched as he listened. The familiar low hum, the one that had been building ever since their encounter with the massive predator, had become more pronounced. It wasn't just in the air anymore. It was in the ground, too. Something was moving beneath them. "Where is it coming from?" Sicorian asked. G's fingers danced over her console, her brow furrowing. "It's everywhere. It's coming from all directions. It's like the whole jungle is alive." Sicorian's pulse quickened. He knew that they had underestimated this planet's ecosystem. Earth didn't just have predators, it had a collective consciousness of sorts, a vast and dangerous intelligence that had learned to adapt to every threat, including the Scyther. The creatures they had faced so far were part of a greater whole, each one a piece in a deadly puzzle. But now they were up against something far more complex. "We need to get to higher ground," Sicorian said, his voice steady but urgent. "There's no telling what's coming, but we won't be able to outrun it if we don't have a vantage point." The team nodded, and they quickly changed course, heading toward the foothills of a nearby mountain range. As they pushed forward, the ground beneath their feet seemed to grow more unstable, the plants around them twisting and shifting in unnatural patterns. Sicorian's suspicions were confirmed. This planet wasn't just a collection of dangerous creatures. The ecosystem itself was fighting back, actively reshaping itself to hunt down the invaders. "Captain," G called out, "I'm detecting more movement. Large scale. Something is definitely preparing for a confrontation. And it's much larger than anything we've faced." Sicorian's mind raced. The creatures they had encountered so far were formidable, but this was something else. They weren't just dealing with beasts, they were dealing with the very heart of the planet itself. Something much more intelligent, much more coordinated, was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. "Prepare yourselves," Sicorian ordered. "This is no longer a hunt. We're the prey." As if on cue, the ground beneath them shifted violently. The scouts barely had time to react before the first wave of attackers descended. These were no ordinary creatures. They were large, hulking forms, sinewy and sleek, their skin covered in chitinous plates, giving them an almost insectoid appearance. But it wasn't just their appearance that was frightening, it was their speed. They moved with an unnatural fluidity, charging forward in a coordinated assault, working together like a pack of predators. Sicorian barely had time to raise his weapon before one of the creatures lunged at him, its claws slashing through the air. He twisted to the side, dodging the attack by mere inches. The creature snarled, its multiple eyes narrowing in on him, calculating its next move. "Fall back!" Sicorian shouted. "Use the terrain!" The scouts quickly split into groups, darting between trees and rocks as the creatures chased after them. Sicorian and G took the lead, using their agility to stay one step ahead of their pursuers. Vesk and Rix were close behind, firing their weapons at the oncoming attackers. The blasts of energy hit their marks, but the creatures seemed unfazed, their tough exoskeletons absorbing the shots without slowing them down. "We need to find a weak spot," Vesk shouted, leaping over a fallen log as a creature snapped at his heels. Sicorian's mind raced. He had studied countless worlds, faced enemies both natural and synthetic, but this was different. Earth's creatures didn't just attack, they adapted, they evolved, and they worked together as part of a greater system. They weren't just threats. They were forces of nature. "We need to hit them hard," Sicorian said, his voice cold with resolve. "We'll force them into a bottleneck. There's a ravine ahead. If we can get them there, we can trap them." The team nodded, moving quickly to execute the plan. The creatures were relentless, but the Scyther scouts had learned something valuable. These predators might be fast, but they lacked the strategic foresight that the scouts had honed over years of intergalactic survival. The planet's creatures might have the advantage of numbers, but the Scyther had the advantage of experience and intellect. "G, take the high ground," Sicorian ordered. "We need a clear shot." She immediately climbed the nearest tree, using her enhanced strength and agility to reach the canopy within seconds. She took up a position, scanning the battlefield below. "I'm in position," G said, her voice steady despite the chaos. ready to fire. Vesk, Nrix, Sicorian called, on me. The team quickly regrouped, their weapons raised, ready to unleash a barrage of firepower. The creatures were closing in, their movements swift and deadly, but they were being funneled into the ravine as planned. Sicorian's heart pounded as he braced himself for the moment of truth. Now! Sicorian shouted. In a coordinated strike, the Zyther team fired together. The energy blasts lit up the jungle, but the creatures were undeterred. They pushed forward, their determination unshaken. Sicorian's eyes narrowed as he realized that their current strategy wouldn't be enough. They needed something else, something more. Fall back to the ravine. Sicorian ordered. Let's give them the terrain they can't fight. The team retreated, leading the creatures into the narrowest part of the ravine, where the rock walls were steep and treacherous. As the last creature entered the gorge, Sicorian gave the signal. Now, he barked. She fired first, her energy blasts striking the rock walls with pinpoint accuracy. The impact caused the ground to shake, and a massive section of the cliff face above the ravine began to collapse, sending rocks and debris tumbling down. The creatures, too focused on their prey, didn't react in time. The falling rocks crushed the first wave of attackers with a deafening crash. The remaining creatures scrambled to retreat, but the narrowing ravine made it impossible for them to escape. Sicorian and his team didn't wait. They charged in, using their superior agility and tactics to finish the job. In moments, the remaining creatures were neutralized, and the battlefield fell silent. The team stood at the edge of the ravine, catching their breath as the dust settled. The jungle around them seemed to return to its normal, eerie calm. The scouts exchanged tired, but victorious glances. For a brief moment, there was silence. Then, Sicorian spoke. "This planet is unlike any we've faced," he said, his voice steady but filled with awe. "Its creatures aren't just predators, they're part of a system. In that system, it's been designed to test us. But we've learned to adapt, to fight back. And that's why we're still standing." She wiped the sweat from her brow, her multi-eyed face a mix of exhaustion and respect. "What do we do next, Captain?" Sicorian glanced toward the distant jungle, where more creatures might be waiting. But his resolve had never been clearer. "We keep moving," he said. "We came here to understand Earth. And now we're going to find out just what makes this planet so dangerous. But we'll do it on our terms. We'll survive this, or we'll die trying." And with that, the Zyther team pushed forward once more, knowing that the real battle had only just begun. Earth had thrown everything it had at them, and they had survived. Now, they would see how far this brutal planet would go to test them. The Zyther scouts had come far. Earth, the planet that had so violently thrown its natural forces at them, was now more than just a challenge, it had become an obsession. Every move they made, every strategy they devised, was an attempt to understand it, to crack the enigma that the planet presented. Yet, with each step, the jungle, the creatures, the ecosystem itself, seemed to grow smarter, more unpredictable. Sicorian and his team had seen things no other species had fought creatures that were no longer simply living organisms but entities that seemed as if they were part of something bigger, something alive in a way no one could fathom. The last few days had been a whirlwind of danger, narrow escapes, and hard-won victories. But now, as they reached the highest point of the ravine they had battled their way into, there was a rare, brief moment of peace. The jungle around them had quieted, as though it was waiting for them to make their next move. Sicorian surveyed the horizon. The dense treetops stretched out before him, a patchwork of greens and browns that seemed to pulse with life. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. That feeling had never left, not since the first encounter with the planet's strange and relentless creatures. Earth had thrown everything it had at them, but it hadn't won yet. He turned to his team, his sharp eyes scanning their faces. She, still focused, but her usual calm had been replaced by an edge of wariness. Vesk, ever the optimist, had his weapon ready, despite the brief reprieve. Nrix, the quiet one, was muttering to himself, analyzing their data. They were tired, battered, and on edge, but they were still standing. They had survived everything Earth had thrown at them. "Do you think it's over?" Chi asked, her voice low, as though the very air could betray them. Sicorian hesitated. He had seen enough to know that Earth had a way of surprising them. He could feel it in his bones. This wasn't over. "Not yet." "No," he said, his voice steady but firm. "It's just getting started." Nrix's eyes flickered as he read the data flowing through his console. "Captain, I've detected a massive disturbance. It's something big. And it's moving toward us." Sicorian stiffened. The thought of facing another onslaught of creatures was unnerving, but this felt different. They weren't just fighting animals anymore, they were fighting the very planet itself. "Prepare yourselves," Sicorian ordered. "Whatever's coming, we need to be ready." The team took their positions, weapons drawn, scanning the terrain around them. But it was clear that whatever was coming wasn't going to be something they could simply shoot their way out of. The air thickened. The jungle seemed to quiet further, as if holding its breath. Then, from the shadows, emerged a creature like none they had encountered before. This one wasn't just large, it was enormous, and its form seemed to blend with the jungle itself. Its body was an intricate mass of vines, roots, and flesh, twisted together in a strange, living symbiosis. It wasn't a single creature, it was a fusion of many, a sentient collective that seemed to embody the jungle's very essence. Sicorian's mouth went dry. "What is that?" he muttered. Chi's eyes widened. It's the planet. It's not just a creature. It's the ecosystem itself, evolved into something far more dangerous." Vesk let out a low whistle. "This isn't just a fight anymore. This is survival on a whole different level." The creature, or the collective, whatever it was, moved slowly, but with purpose. Its massive roots coiled in the soil, and its tendrils reached out like long, twisted arms, sensing every movement. Its body was a network of living organisms, each part contributing to the whole. It was a vast organism that seemed to control the very environment around them, as if it were Earth's ultimate defense mechanism. Sicorian's mind raced. They couldn't fight this with brute force. It wasn't just one enemy. It was Earth itself, its very nature rising to repel them. They had to outthink it, outmaneuver it. "Move!" Sicorian shouted. "We need to get closer. We can't fight it from here." The team darted into action, weaving between trees and rocks, staying low as they moved closer to the creature. Every step felt like it could be their last, but they couldn't stop now. Earth had tested them, but it had also underestimated them. The Zyther were survivors. And survivors didn't give up. As they closed in, the creature reacted. Vines shot out like whips, lashing at them with incredible speed. One of the vines wrapped around Nrix's leg, pulling him into the air with terrifying force. His cry of alarm was quickly silenced as the vine squeezed tighter, lifting him higher, higher toward the mass of organic matter that composed the creature's core. "Get him down!" Vesk shouted, opening fire on the vine. But the blasts barely slowed the creature's movements. Chi raised her weapon, aiming carefully. "I can't get a clear shot. It's too well protected." Sicorian didn't waste any time. He grabbed a nearby rock and hurled it at the vine, distracting the creature long enough for Vesk to leap into action. With a roar of effort, Vesk lunged, using his weapon to sever the vine and free Nrix from its grip. The group barely had time to catch their breath before the creature launched a new attack, its tendrils lashing at them from all sides. Sicorian's mind raced, his pulse quickening. They couldn't keep running and dodging forever. They had to find its weakness, something to exploit. "Look for the core!" Sicorian shouted. "It's the heart of the system. If we take it out, we can break its hold on the planet." But finding the core wasn't going to be easy. The creature's form was so vast and convoluted that it was impossible to tell where one part ended and the other began. Every vine, every root, was connected, intertwined in a complex web that seemed to feed off the jungle itself. Then it hit him. The connection. The planet's very life force, its ecosystem, was the creature's core. It wasn't just a physical structure to destroy. It was a living, breathing thing, intricately linked to everything around them. The jungle itself was part of it. The only way to stop it was to sever that connection. Vesk, Nrix, we need to cut off its connection to the jungle, Sicorian said. We need to take out the plants surrounding it, anything that links it to the environment. Vesk nodded, his eyes wild with urgency. Got it, Captain. The team split again, using their weapons to target the surrounding flora, tearing apart the vines and roots that connected the creature to the earth. But as they worked, the creature grew more frantic, more aggressive. It was fighting to survive, to protect its connection to the planet. It lashed out, sending vines like spears toward them, each strike stronger than the last. But the team pressed on. They kept cutting, kept firing, until the creature's connection to the earth began to weaken. The ground trembled once more, but this time, it wasn't from the creature's movements. It was from the rupture in the system, the rupture that signaled the creature's imminent collapse. Sicorian's heart pounded as the creature's body began to flail, its tendrils writhing in pain. With one final coordinated strike, the team severed the last of the creature's connections. The massive being let out a final, ear-splitting screech before it collapsed into the earth, dissolving back into the jungle from which it had come. Silence followed. Sicorian fell to his knees, breathing heavily. The battle was over. Earth had tested them, had thrown everything it could at them, but they had survived. And in doing so, they had learned something vital. Earth wasn't just a dangerous planet, it was a living, breathing organism, one that had adapted over millennia to protect itself. But that adaptability was both its strength and its weakness. It could only defend itself for so long. The team gathered around Sicorian, exhausted but victorious. They had done the impossible. They had defeated Earth's greatest defense. And they had learned to respect it, not just as a planet, but as a force of nature. We did it, Vesk said, grinning through his exhaustion. Sicorian nodded, looking up at the sky, where the sun was beginning to set. We did, he said softly. And now we understand. Earth isn't just a planet. It's a challenge. A test. But we've passed. And with that, the Zyther scouts stood, not as conquerors, but as survivors. They had come to Earth as intruders. They had left as something more, something that had faced the impossible and lived to tell the tale. Let's go home, Sicorian said, his voice steady with the wisdom of the battle they had just fought. We've earned it. And with that, they turned, their backs to the jungle that had almost consumed them, knowing that the lessons they had learned would carry them through any challenge the universe could throw at them.